So a little while ago, my wife and I checked into a hotel at Lake Tahoe, and the woman at the front desk, she looked up and she smiled and said, "We offer our guests a complimentary glass of wine every single evening." And so I smiled back and said, "Thank you," and that was that. But it wasn't just that. So because for the rest of that evening, standing at the edge of one of the most beautiful lakes in the entire world, I couldn't stop thinking about that glass of wine, the release, the unwinding, the escape. And I actually truly remember thinking, I'm standing at Lake Tahoe right now, this stunning lake. Why do I need anything else? And the answer that came back was because something inside still wanted to escape. Even here, even now, almost 2 years later, 2 years sober, I still felt it. And that's what this video is about. It's not about my sobriety success story, but the part that's still being figured out. So I want to back up to the beginning just for a moment because I think context really matters here. When I was 20 years old, I went to rehab. And honestly, at the time, I thought it was stupid. Like, I didn't belong there. Like, I really didn't have a problem with alcohol. But looking back, there's no doubt. I straight up needed to be there. I belonged there. But I wasn't ready to see it yet. I was a young pup. And so I went on drinking for the next 2 decades. And here's something I want to be honest about. I was always the life of the party, or at least I'd like to think I was the loud one, the funny one, the person that people gravitated towards, at least, when I wasn't really drunk. And the truth is, I'm an introvert. That person at the party that was really outgoing and wild and crazy, it really wasn't me. It was a version of me that alcohol made possible. And for a long time, I didn't know the difference. I genuinely didn't know who I was without a drink in my hand. And part of me wanted to find out what it would be like not to drink. So a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I took 10 months off of work. I was burned out, I was stressed, I was running on empty. And during that time, I decided to take a year off drinking. Part of it was practical. I was starting to think about building something, content around positive psychology, consciousness, and human potential, that stuff that I talk about here. And drinking honestly felt completely out of alignment with who I was trying to become. But part of me knew it was deeper than that. Deep down, I knew I had a problem. I'd always known. I wanted to see if I could do it, so I stopped. And for a year, it actually went okay. I had a year without alcohol. And so after that year, I thought maybe I could come back. Maybe my relationship with alcohol is different. I could drink like a normal person. Things were different now. And spoiler alert, they weren't. In about 6 months of returning to drinking, I blacked out tons of times. And the days after those nights were some of the darkest I can remember, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. I was drinking because I wasn't happy, because I was trying to escape a reality I didn't want to be in. And that escape, it was making things worse. It became very clear very quickly I couldn't come back to this lifestyle. And so I stopped drinking again. And almost 2 years later, after being sober, here's what I can tell you has genuinely changed. I went to my own wedding completely sober at the age of 42. Nobody had to worry about how I was going to act. I didn't have to worry about how I was going to act, and that was the best part. I showed up completely as myself. I laughed a lot. I cried a lot. And I enjoyed every moment. I was present for all of it. And the best part I would say is that the next morning, I didn't have to apologize to anyone for anything. That might sound like a small thing, but for me, straight up, honestly, it's not. Because for most of my adult life, I'd wake up after family events and gatherings with that feeling, that low-level grade of shame, of not quite knowing what I'd said or done. And now I can show up for those moments and actually be in them fully, authentically, as my goofy self. And I heard Eminem say once that his superpower is sobriety. And when I heard him say that, something inside of me just lit up, because here's this person living one of the most high profile glitz and glamour lifestyles you can imaginably live, and he's saying that staying sober is what actually makes everything possible in his life. So that I think that, he can still create, still perform, still fully be himself without that escape hatch. And I think about that when it gets hard. If someone like Eminem can do it, who spent most of his career on stage drinking and high, I can do it. Sobriety is my superpower too. I truly think it takes a tremendous amount of discipline to get sober and stay sober. And honestly, I'm pretty proud of it. Genuinely straight up proud. It's honestly the greatest achievement of my life. But here's what I want to be really honest with you, because this channel is about authenticity above anything else. So standing at Lake Tahoe, I told my wife something that was uncomfortable to say out loud, but I had to say it, and I looked at her and I said, I think I'm boring now. Like, I think my life might just be boring. And I meant that in the moment. And what I realized is that I missed the release, the letting go, that feeling of just escaping just, for a little bit. The next day, I came across this quote from someone called Soberdave on social media. It popped up on my social media. I think it listens to the things you're talking about. And it said, that stopping drinking isn't the real aim. The real aim is building such a strong sense of self-worth that the idea of dulling your body and mind, it simply just doesn't appeal to you anymore. And when I heard that, or when I read it, I just sat with that, because that's exactly where I'm at, where I'm not yet. I'm sober, and I'm proud of being sober, but I haven't fully arrived at the place that the quote describes, where the idea of dulling my mind just doesn't appeal. There's still moments where it does appeal, where the escape sounds pretty damn good, where I feel the pull. And I think that pretending otherwise, would be bullshit. Sometimes the idea of escaping reality, it sounds pretty good. So if you've been following my videos, I've been talking about the law of resonance lately. And very simply, the law of resonance states that you don't get what you want in life, you get what you are at the deepest levels. In its simplest form, that it's basically saying that everything we're experiencing in this 3D world is merely a reflection of our deepest inner world. So here's where the law of resonance comes into this video, because this isn't just about my sobriety story. It's also about the story of what level I've been operating at different points in my life, and what my relationship with alcohol has been reflecting back to me. When I was drinking heavily, what I was at the root level was someone escaping, someone performing a version of himself that wasn't real, someone whose inner state was restless and unsettled enough, that altering it chemically felt necessary to get by. And my life reflected that. The blackouts, the shame, the mornings after, the relationships that matched that energy. All of it was the law of resonance doing exactly what it does, showing me who I was at the deepest level. Not who I wanted to be, of course, but who I actually was showing up as from the deepest level. And getting sober changed that behavior, but here's what I'm learning. And this is the part that I'm still in the middle of. Sobriety alone doesn't automatically build a richer inner life. What it does is it removes the escape, but it doesn't automatically fill the space the escape was occupying. That's the work. And that's where I'm at right now, figuring out how to build an inner life so full, so coherent, so genuinely satisfying that the idea of dulling it starts to lose its appeal naturally, not through willpower and discipline, not through white knuckling it, but because the root has become so strong enough really, that escaping from it, stops making sense. So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, for me personally right now, it looks like this channeling this energy into something that I think might actually help people. It also looks like my meditation practice and going deeper, to try to access the root of it all. Because I think building that reservoir of bliss consciousness is super important, like the video we talked about earlier. It looks like nature. It looks like getting outside, moving my body, feeling grounded in something real. And honestly, sometimes it just feels like you jumping in my truck and driving off-road super fast on a dirt road, which I realize is probably not the most enlightened answer, but it's a real one. And I think that's the point. I'm still figuring out how to be fun, or better said would be how to have fun sober. I'm still learning who I am without that escape hatch, still discovering what genuine release is and letting go feels like without a drink. And some days that's uncomfortable. Some days it's like Lake Tahoe, standing at one of the most beautiful places in the world, and it's really uncomfortable. But here's what I do know. Every time I've tended to the root, every time I've showed up to my practice, every time I've chosen to be present instead of escaping, that baseline rises a little bit more and a little bit more. That inner life gets a little richer, and that gap between where I am now and where that sober Dave quote is pointing, I think it gets a little smaller. And that's the work. And I'm in it, right alongside of you here. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It was pretty honest and authentic, but hopefully it helps someone.